So, yeah. So, you guys are ready.
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order this Monday, December 20th, 2021, regular meeting of the Canal Winchester local. Mr. Roberts, if you would, call the roll.
Mr. Butler,
Here.
Mr. Kruger, Mr. Metzler, Mrs. Talley,
Here.
Mr. Donahue. Here.
Okay. Thank you. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay? At this time, I'd like a moment of silence to honor Demetrius and London Wall-Neal, two of our students in the district that recently passed away. So if everyone could be quiet and honor them with a moment of silence. Thank you. And we're going to move on to number 4, which is any additions or deletions. So are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
Yes, we do. Under G5, we've added special service contract. That's under consent agenda G5.
And moving on to approval of the agenda. So I'm going to need a motion to approve the agenda this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mrs. Talley,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue. Yes. Mr. Butler. Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 3-0. And we're going to move on to presentations. Excuse me. So we have a presentation from the CWEA this evening.
Good evening. I'm Carla Sherwinski. I'm CWEA co-president with building rep Mike Stuckey here as my left-hand man since he's standing on this side. I just wanted to start off and first of all, thank you again for the time. Not gonna lie, this past month has been tough. It's been rough for all of us with the loss of our students. Definitely something you are never prepared for. We appreciate the support and the services that were provided on immediately the day after and following, and continuing to be supported for our staff and for our students, certainly. It's just been tough with everything, with the workload, fatigue, subbing, covering classes, everything. It's been hard, and teachers are tired, and even though all of that's happening, they're still coming to work every day and doing their best, and they're persevering, and they're hitting it hard with their best they've got that day. And some days, your best is maybe not where you want it to be as you're dealing with whatever. Loss, especially the past couple weeks, have been really hard. But again, there is good stuff happening in our schools, and I thank the administration again for their support, both at the building level and at the district level, of realizing, especially with that. And continue to show the ongoing support, because we know that you appreciate what we do. It's just the daily grind is hard, so hearing those things has been wonderful. I do want to share just a little bit of what's going on, even though this is the last week here, really part of the week. You'll notice a bit of a theme in our things we're going to talk about tonight. Specifically, we got a lot of gingerbread house stuff going on, but I think it's kind of cool to see how it's being applied at the different levels. So at the middle school, the 6th grade team is working on gingerbread house building challenge. They didn't list any specifics, but I'm intrigued as to what they're coming up with those challenges. The third grade at Winchester Trail is also completing a gingerbread house PBL. The kids collaborated with partners to build a house out of graham crackers. They calculated its area and perimeter, and they established and followed a budget to purchase decorating supplies and write a persuasive letter to Mr. Gingy to convince him to purchase their house. The PBL was cross-curricular and gave the kids practice with Habit 4, think win-win, and they had to work cohesively with a partner at each step, so that sounds like it was a lot of fun. And then at Indian Trail, some of the first grade classes are reading different versions of the Gingerbread Man. I bet you haven't heard of some of these. The Runaway Tortilla, the Gingerbread Ninja, and the Gingerbread Girl. So I love the variations on all of that. They're also comparing and contrasting those different versions, and they'll finish out their activities by tasting gingerbread cookies and voting on their favorite kind of cookie and graphing out those class results. Still other things going on across the district, may not be gingerbread related, but still hard work going on. Kindergarten students are learning about their neighborhood and their community helpers, and they're learning about greater than, less than, and equal to in their math, the math programs that they're piloting. And they're learning to make different ways of counting to 6, which may not sound like a big deal, but for our kindergartners, that's, they're working it, and especially right now before break. So as you can see, our teachers are working and continuing to work hard, and just want to give a shout out to all those teachers for continuing that, as well as, making those connections with our gingerbread man. I think I would like to go to some of those classes. I don't get to do that. So thank you for your time. Any questions for us?
No. Thank you guys for all you do. I know the teachers, they've been working hard this entire school year, so we really appreciate what they do. We really appreciate what you do, Carla.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to move on to a discussion. So we're going to have, moving on to our subject, and it's going to be changes to the school start and end times due to bus and transportation issues. So initially, we're going to start by opening up a discussion, and I'm going to pass it off to
Yeah, Dr. Burney, want to come on
Bernie.
up and join me here? This is, this was a conversation I was hoping we were not going to have this school year, but unfortunately, we have to have it. As we know, and we've talked about this before, our transportation department, our bus drivers are operating on a skeleton crew already. We normally have 42 drivers, correct, with 2 subs? 2 permanent subs. 2 permanent subs, for really a total of 44 positions. We're down to 38 drivers and no subs. Doesn't sound like a big deal, 4 to 6 drivers. It absolutely is a big deal when you're getting kids back and forth to school. It makes a huge difference. We found out last week that we are losing 2 bus drivers. One is resigning permanently, so we're going to be down 1, and 1 is going in for medical reasons and will be out for a period of time, non-COVID related, and we wish that individual the best. And there could be a 3rd driver, but we're definitely going to be down 2 drivers for the first several months of school. Good news is we do have 2 new drivers in the work. They're going through the training right now. However, they won't be ready maybe March.
I would
March.
anticipate beginning to mid-March.
That's if they go, they have to take all the classes, pass the test, this and that, but you're talking March at the earliest. So we are going to be down 2 more drivers, and that throws everything that we have been doing into chaos right now. And so we have a couple options, but really there are no good options at this time. We can't continue to operate at the same way that we're doing things and be as efficient as we are right now. And so, Dr. Bruning, would you like to?
I guess if you would kind of outline what the options are, you can kind of look around what surrounding districts have done. Some districts have gone to remote learning for a week or 2. Other districts have called parents the morning of and said, hey, your bus isn't running. Get them to school if you can. If you can't, it's excused absence. So what we are proposing in transportation is is outlined on the front display up here. What we would be proposing is that middle school, high school, and Winchester Trail operate on a 1-hour early dismissal, and Indian Trail go on a 1-hour late start. With the numbers of children that we have riding and the fact that we do not bus in town, we feel we can make this work. It's not, I get it, it's not a great thing, but what it does beyond this is it would allow us to have up to 5 absences and we could still get kids to school in a reasonable manner. The way it is right now, I would anticipate half the days in January, we would have to call parents the morning of and say, your bus isn't running. And I'm basing that upon historical absence data. I mean, it's not, ideally, nobody misses a day, but we know that doesn't happen. The middle school then would go from 7:30 to 1:15, or I'm sorry, high school goes 7:35 to 1:15, middle school 7:45 to 1:30, and then Winchester Trail would go 9 to 2:35. Indian Trail on the 1 hour late start would go 9:55 to 3:30. And with the kindergarten, though, they are very tight on their state hours, and preschool also has an hours requirement. What we would do under this plan is kindergarten and preschool would come in on the Winchester Trail time, and they would go home on the Indian Trail time. We have the busing capacity to do that. Preschool is special needs, so there almost really doesn't change a whole lot for preschool. We could bring them, as long as they were going with other kids, we could bring them almost whenever. But that's the outline of the plan that I am proposing, and the benefit is that it would allow us to have, we could have up to 5 drivers and still function. 5 drivers be absent and still function.
We understand this is not ideal. We understand this is going to disrupt our elementary parents, especially if you have parents at the Winchester Trail and elementary. Now you have 2 different start times for them. However, I think it's the best of the worst case scenario. I don't want to call school off or tell parents, hey, bus is not coming out to you. And you're going to have to provide transportation on your own where they just don't come to school. Or we're just going to delay, kids being picked up by an hour and 45 minutes and dropping them off. And so at least this is a consistent schedule. It's not the best. We understand that. But I believe moving forward, at least for the next couple months, hopefully we'll pick up a few more drivers along the way or subs to help us out. But we know the next, at least January, February, it's going to be extremely challenging if we don't do something.
One thing I forgot to mention, then I'll entertain questions. Part of the reason we have to split Winchester Trail and Indian Trail is that the K-5 is our largest ridership. It's significantly larger than middle school, and of course high school has the smallest. But Indian and Winchester Trail, we just can't run them at the same time. So however we'd work it, we just can't do them at the same time.
And the way I see it, this schedule will allow for a reduction in traffic all coming in to the entrances to the elementary schools in the morning.
Yeah, we
So that'll help.
should have a reduction in that traffic jam that we have every morning.
One thing you had mentioned was the contact, our state hours. So I guess the question I have is, how does this affect us as far as our state hours? I know you talked about the elementary school kids, but middle school, high school, will this affect our ability to obviously to meet that time that we're required to as a district? Or
Yes, we went through that, and the other schools are, or the other grade levels even, are significantly above what they need to for the year. Kindergarten and preschool with their requirements were the ones that were tight, and that's why we've had to maintain them on the same schedule.
Now, I do have another question. Will the school do anything to accommodate those parents who are dropping off children to Indian Trails and Winchester Trails so that they don't have to come back at 2 separate times?
We're going to work on
At this time, we're trying to work on it, but
Yeah.
that's a lot of parents and a lot of kids, and we don't have the staffing for it.
Okay.
That's the issue right there, because we'd have to bring in the teachers earlier too, but we got to staff them, and plus we got to put them someplace. And if we could find a way to do it, we'll do it, but at this time, we're still working on seeing whether that can happen.
Yeah, if it's finding a way for 20 or 30 kids, but if we're talking about finding a way for 200 kids, we don't really,
So could
we're not set up for that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
could you do a polling and just find out where the numbers are?
Well, I tell you what I have done is for the kindergarten kids, I did look up kindergartners who are going to the same address as an Indian Trail student. And we have 43 in the kindergarten AM class. Now PM, they're going home and the older sibling is already there. But for the AM, 43 kindergartners and 24 of our all-day kindergartners. So there are 67 kids that right now have a sibling at just Indian Trail, that would now begin to put them on a different schedule. We have a number of other kids, I think I counted like 111, but all those other kids from 67 to 111 have a sibling in Indian Trail and at Winchester Trail. So we kind of looked at that as a wash, that it wouldn't be, I mean, it's a difference for them, but at least there is an older sibling in the household as well. So, but yes, we're looking at that, and that's out of 258 total kindergarten students.
So how does the later start time for Indian Trails impact like their ability to eat breakfast?
I haven't gotten with Tammy Heading yet on how she would want to approach that. With a 1 hour late start, we could still have breakfast and then turn around and have lunch. Because when we don't do that, it's because we're going a 2 hour late start. But I'll have to get with Tammy and kind of get a feel for how she wants to approach that.
Okay.
And just to be clear, if we were to stay with the plan that we're in now, you're saying that based on historical data, there's a likelihood we could have multiple days each month where we're basically not able to run our bus routes.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, we only had one day like this, but we did have a day where we had 8 drivers absent. And so if we had 8, we'd be calling like 6 or 7 bus loads of parents and saying, your kid's bus isn't riding today, get them to school if you can. And in talking with the principals, the thing that this also does, even though absolutely we are losing some instructional time, is we are allowing for consistency of everyone, and then we don't have to get into an equity issue of some people not being able to, because their driver, simply because their driver misses more, we're having problems with that. But that's where the mindset was, is to provide consistency and instruction.
One thing I've seen, and I've seen this in other districts where they've, and it's actually affected my family in the Cleveland area, where they essentially just had to shut school down on multiple days. And I think there's no good, obviously there's no good option. We'd love to have more bus drivers. I know we've been out there recruiting them. I know Mrs. Hunt's done a really good job about trying to recruit new staff. So we've been proactive in this, but just based on the trends we're seeing as far as the larger economy and the workforce, this is kind of starting to finally affect us here in the district. And I think that's what our parents understand, that this isn't a decision we're making just because we decide we want to make a change. We obviously are doing this because we obviously don't have the staff, obviously, to run. Mr. Soutler called it a skeleton crew, and that's what I've kind of noticed in the school district that I work in. Is, we're really just basically trying to fill in the gap. So I think this is going to help us get there. But just to be clear to our parents, this isn't the first choice, and this is not ideal for us. We'd rather stay on the schedule we have now. But
Right. Actually, this is like a third choice, because we have already, first choice would be everybody gets the route and they're doing the route every day. Second choice is what we've been doing now, which is where we've actually absorbed routes. But I mean, that's not great for COVID concerns, but it is what it is. We have some buses with 60 kids on it. And so now we're to our third choice, which is now this model.
I just wanted to make sure for those people who watch, our parents listening at home, that obviously this was something that we weren't, obviously this wasn't our first, obviously like you said, this was the second option, but obviously the situations have changed and we're going to be losing some bus drivers in January. So if we don't do that, then the other option. And my concern obviously is for our district, as far as it's spread out, we have a lot of rural areas. There's some some parts of our district where our kids can't walk, they don't have the option, and their parents might have the resources to drive them to school every day. So when you said equity, that's what I thought of. I was like, I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to be here, not just the parents who have access to vehicles or have the time. I want to make sure that all of our students can get here every day, and it's consistent. So it's a challenging situation, but I think obviously, I know you guys have spent a lot of time working on this. So
I guess a question I have, at what point, how many absentees by bus drivers is it going to take for this not to be able to work?
Well, I'm looking at being 3 to the good. We could have 8.
Okay.
On the 9th, we're still calling a bus and saying it's not going to run
And
today.
you've already done your study from last year on how many people you had?
Only once in the past 3 years did we have 8 absent.
Okay.
And
I know.
And for the record, you all will still be actively recruiting.
Yes, I interviewed, Jody Good and I interviewed 2 people last week. They have gotten their criminal background checks, so they're beginning the process. So yes, we are still. It's honestly, But it's a demanding process, and so normally we have about half drop out. And it's not that we give up on them, it's that they decide, you know what, this is more than I wanted.
Yeah, understandably.
And Dr. Bruning, one other question I have for you is, as the weather starts to get colder and we start to see those delays, how would that affect our start and end times? Is it essentially we're going to go from a 1 hour delay to a 2 hour delay, or like, just kind of explain that to
Yeah, Mr. Sotler and I are going to have to talk through that, because obviously if you're already gone a 1 hour delay, a 2 hour delay doesn't work. So, but we haven't talked about that yet.
Okay. Well, like I said, I know we want to be proactive and put the information out there so our parents know. And
Yeah.
I just, as I'm thinking about it, I know that's one of the questions that'll probably, and because that'll pop into my mind too, like what happens on those days where the weather's bad and we got to wait for those roads to clear? So for those parents, just to have some idea of the start and end times on those days, I think would be.
What's the time frame on this, Mike? We looking at all January?
Yeah, we could start this January 10th.
January 10th.
It was
We're
talked
gonna go month to
about.
month, or is it going to be until we announce that it's no longer?
Basically, we're going to go at least till the end of February, because we know possibly in March, we might have 2 new drivers coming on board, possibly, but definitely January, February. And the sooner we can get more people involved, maybe they have their CDL already, maybe they're trained, and it doesn't take long to get them on board. But we have to get up to at least 3 or 4 more drivers.
So this isn't the end all be all.
This
but
isn't the end all be all for right now.
Okay.
So I don't want to say month to month, and I don't want to put an end date on it. The possibility we're thinking is maybe sometime springtime, March.
Okay.
Just when we get our drivers and hopefully get a few more drivers on board. Maybe we get a few more subs.
The one thing, the reason for January 10th and not the first day back on the 5th, and the principals brought this up, is that this would give them the opportunity to remind kids, hey, go home, tell your mom, send stuff home. On starting Monday, you're going to be on an hour delay, or starting on Monday, you're going to be getting out an hour early. Because we try as we might, when we try to get stuff out too soon, it doesn't. So this way we get kids in school that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're telling them, we're sending the email blast over holiday break, so it's not like that's going to be the first time they're going to hear. But it seems to mean more when that child comes home and says, hey, Mom, you never told me we were going to get out an hour early. And then Mom and Dad goes, well, I didn't know. Well, so we're just trying to create another avenue. 90% of our parents will do great by that, but 10% throws this way off. So we need to get 100% understanding what we're doing.
So as we move forward, obviously, I know you're working through some of those solutions. So just for those parents, because I know there might be 1 or 2 exceptions where parents will have a hard time adjusting. So, obviously, I'd like to see you guys, you and Mr. Sotler, just kind of sit down and kind of say we can accommodate, like Mrs. Talley was saying, for those exceptions, just especially as we just transition this first couple of weeks, to see if we can't figure it out so that we can make sure that all of our kids can be here every day. Because I think that's got to be the primary focus. We can't have days where it's just like, well, if you can get here, you can get here. We want to make sure that our kids can be here every day. Even if we got to lose a little instructional time, which isn't ideal, I want to make sure that we're giving opportunities so all of our students can be here. So obviously we can empower them all for success. So that's obviously going to be our focus and our goal. So it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yep. I was hoping we wouldn't have to do this year, but out of our control. And consistency is important here. And that's why we decided let's go with the plan, put it out there instead of hit and miss every other day. Really throwing parents off. So this will start January 10th. We'll get information out probably this week, of course this week, and then we'll get it out over break. And like Dr. Bruning said, we'll come back and hit it hard that January 4th, 5th, and 6th, so parents know January 10th. I'm not putting an end date on it as of right now because we don't know. Hopefully this is not going to be an all-year permanent thing, but that's where we are.
Okay. All right. Is there any other question, members from the board?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So, Mr. Sotler, just moving forward, I know this is a discussion item. Do you need a vote from the board this evening, or is this information we're going to put out and we can move on to
I
public
don't
comment?
need a vote, but if the board would like to vote on it, we could put it under action item. That's totally up to you.
Okay. I think it might be best to just put this in an action item just to make sure that obviously the community is aware of it. We took a vote on it. And then if we need to come back and change it, we always have the ability to do that moving forward.
So we'll have this under action item number 4.
Okay. be action item number 4. Okay, and that'll be our 4th action item. And then, other than that, do we need to vote to put it on the agenda, or we good to move on? We don't need to vote right now to put it on the action item. We can just add it in there, we can move on, correct?
You could add it in right now, so someone can make a motion, add it to the
Okay, so
action item.
So let's go ahead and make a motion for the action item number 4, and that's gonna be to adopt the change of the start and end time along with the busing that has been presented to us this evening.
So move.
Okay,
Second.
so it's a motion by Mr. Donahue and then seconded by Mrs. Talley. Okay, so that's gonna be our 4th action item this evening.
Take a vote.
All right, so Mr. Roberts, when you're ready?
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay, so that will be the 4th action item this evening.
Okay.
And that being said, we're gonna move on to public comment. So it does look like we have 2 for our public voice this evening. So the first person up to speak to the board this evening is Mr. David George.
So thank you for giving me time tonight. My name's Dave George.
Yeah.
There we go. Better? Now you can all hear me. My name's Dave George. I'm a father to a 7th grader and a high school sophomore in the district. My oldest son graduated last year and is enrolled and doing very well at Ohio University. Thank you, Canal Winchester Schools. He was in Canal Winchester Schools from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. The Canal Winchester Historical Society occupation of the school space that was briefly discussed in the last school board meeting. In that meeting, it was discussed as an item that was being investigated by the school district in order to assist the Historical Society with space constraints at their current facility. I believe that this would be a great use of unused space within the school district, a way for the school district to cost recover for space that has overhead utility costs, and it would be a great continuation of the partnership between the district and the Historical Society in a co-located space with the National Barber Museum. I did learn on Wednesday evening, following the Monday evening board meeting, that this was not necessarily an investigation that was being undertaken by the district, but was essentially an agreement that was already in place. However, it had not yet been formalized with contracts and signatures. The quote-unquote unused space that was being investigated is not unused. So it has been used for many years by the high school and middle school science Olympiad teams for preparation, build events, building and testing, and study for knowledge testing events. And the space is perfect for Science Olympiad. When Science Olympiad program first started, almost 2 decades ago now, if not a little bit more than that, it was run out of a classroom. Since that time, it's grown to, in most years, 2 middle school teams and a high school team. Each team has approximately 15 students, so we're talking 45 students. And that space that they're in now is perfect. It's got proper electricity for the tools that we need to use for our build events. It's got plenty of space for testing. We can get out into the parking lot most nights if we need to test outdoor events. So it's really perfect space for that. And we do have a lot of appreciation for that space because we have space that some schools don't have for their Science Olympiad. So kind of moving back to because that was something that I wrote after I wrote the statement. Sorry about that. So I have been a parent volunteer with the Science Olympiad for 7 years. This is my 8th year. During that time, there have been 6 state tournaments held. Of course, we didn't have one in 2020 with COVID. And the Canal Winchester teams have advanced through regionals to the state tournament in all 6 tournaments. So I was wrong when I first started communicating with you. The middle school team advanced to the state tournament in 2015 through 2019, and the high school team advanced to the state tournament in 2021. We have an excellent track record of recent successes, and we have the leadership in place with Ms. Cook at the middle school and Mr. Gebhardt at the high school to continue performing at a high level. I'd like to thank Mr. Stotler for assuring me that the move was not happening quickly and that we would have use of the current space through the end of this competition season that ends in early April at the state tournament. If we had been forced to move quickly, it would have destroyed the season. We would have had no time to prepare for our invitational tournaments or the regional competitions that start in early January. It was also discussed that there might be some sort of vote by the board during this meeting. I respectfully ask that there's no vote taken during this meeting on this item. It's my opinion that there is additional due diligence that needs to be undertaken prior to a show of approval or support from the board. The board needs to fully understand any fiscal implications of any agreement between the district and Historical Society, as well as understanding the opportunity cost of giving up use of the space for at least the next 10 years. The board also needs to understand the cost that will be incurred in moving the Science Olympiad team and their equipment, including any minor renovations and/or electrical work that may need to be done to accommodate the electrical tools that are being used. If you're going to ask your very successful Science Olympiad team to be moved, they need to move into a space that has the same capabilities and amenities as the space that they've been working in for many years. I do believe that the use of this space for the Historical Society is an excellent idea. I'm not attempting to stop progress on any agreement. I think that partnerships like this between local schools and local nonprofit organizations, especially historical nonprofit-based organizations, have the opportunity to benefit both parties. I believe we have additional educational opportunities that will arise from this partnership for our students, and I applaud that, and I hope that this happens. I just ask that full due diligence be completed prior to a show of support from the board. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. George. Okay. And we have a second public voice this evening, and it's going to be Mrs. Vangela Barnes.
Hi, I'm Vangela Barnes, and thank you for letting me speak tonight, and Merry Christmas to everybody. I had 4 quick things that I just wanted to bring to you guys' attention. I met tonight with the Columbus Care Association. They provide mental health services for the community, especially in times of grieving and in times of trauma. I have some packets that I would like to leave with you guys to please give out to the school buildings. Maybe we could scan this in and put it out on our website for other parents. They would like to come to one of our buildings and hold a session for any parents, especially of the kindergartners or Demetrius's class, if they want to, just to have a circular opportunity to talk, even for the kids, if they want to do something for the kids. This is a free service that's offered through the City of Columbus, and it can also be utilized for any of the kids who live in the Columbus area or go to Canal schools. They're willing to come out. It's in Franklin County, and it's called the Columbus Care Association. And the other thing that I wanted to say that Miss Pruitt, I was at the services today. Miss Pruitt did a beautiful job of talking about London, and I just wanted to commend her and put that on the record of how she talked about the young lady and the things that she said about her. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and only because I have a huge family, is that I kind of put this out there, but I'd like to know if we could have our swearing in ceremony not in this room due to COVID and have it in a bigger room, maybe the auditorium. A lot of my family wants to come to the swearing in ceremony. We have 3 members on our board coming in January that will be sworn in, and I'm assuming that they may want to have their family come. I've been to a couple of other swearing in ceremonies, Reynoldsburg and Worthington, and so they did not have it in their normal room. So I'm just asking if we could consider that, if we could put it in a bigger room to give people an ability to spread out. I alone have 26 siblings, not that all of them would be there, but I'm just saying I have a big family. And then the last thing is, I don't know, I just heard the information about the bus. And in hearing that, I just wondered, is there any consideration, or have you guys thought of outsourcing And is that a possibility for getting out, any contractors to do some of our busing temporarily? And for parents who may have an issue who have to go to work and they're single parents and they have two different schedules, is there any sort of coupon or anything that they can get if they have to have their kid go in an Uber or something so they can get to work? So there are Uber drivers around, and maybe they can pick the kid up and drop them off, and it might cost something. But I'm just asking, have you considered it? And those are the two things that I thought about. But thanks everybody for letting me have an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mrs. Barnes. Okay. And I believe that is it for public voice this evening. So with that, we're going to move on to our executive report. So first up is our treasurer's report this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Watson. Please pull up the capital spending plan. This is a new report that I put together this month that I want to kind of expand on through the next few months and into the future. I kind of want this document to be kind of a living document of kind of the history of what we've done, capital expenditure wise. That way we kind of can reflect on what year did we do tennis courts, that type of thing. When did we do that roofing project? Or when did we replace the turf at the field, and kind of be a living document, but also a forecast into the future of things that we know is coming. How many buses do we have on in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and those type of things. So just do a quick overview. So I kind of just go into a summary, basically outlining the district doesn't have a dedicated tax levy for permanent improvement. It's something we do need, but at this time we're not looking to levy or anything like that. It may be 5, 10 years down the road we eventually look at something to where we have dedicated funds for permanent improvement. So it just kind of talks about how the district has transferred money from the general fund. We do have a $500,000 maintenance requirement that was part of the high school project that we have to move $208,380 into a 034 maintenance fund that we're not using right now. Kind of have a summary of what our transfers have been the last 5 years. And then we get into a kind of an income statement, revenues and expenditures, what the budget is for this year. You can see we're spending just slightly over $688,000 this year over what we're bringing in revenue, but that still leaves us with about $5.5 million in the permanent improvement fund. We have some pretty large projects this year. We had a $1.2 million roofing project at the high school that was outside the scope of the OFCC project. We're replacing the turf and the track at the high school. We're looking to do something with the bleachers because they're currently not ADA compliant. We need to make those ADA compliant. We'll probably do some other things while we're working on that. The press box is also outdated. So there's some work to be done at the stadium side. We've got some paving. Did a decent paving project out here where the old modulars were. We've added 5 buses this year. We're trying to get a van for transportation. So we have a couple of different issues with the transportation going on. We can't get our hands on a van, so we were going to look at having a couple vans to either use those for like athletic trips and special education transportation and things like that, but we can't get one until at least what, Mike, June?
No, I'll get to place the order in March for delivery in late August, early September.
Okay, so even when we come up with a plan, we can't get our hands on what we need with shortages and things like that. We are adding to the bus fleet, so that's good. We are continuing to, while we're talking about transportation, we are continuing to look at different options for sign-on bonus, referral bonuses, things like that. Hopefully bring that to the board in January for approval so we can recruit and retain bus drivers. Hopefully this is a short-term issue, not a long-term issue. Then we get into the short-term projects. So essentially these are projects this year. Talked about those right there, building improvements, looking to add on to the maintenance barn. It's small, we put water out there that we didn't have water out. And then we're doing some technology upgrades. We are updating the PA systems in those 3 buildings, copiers, We're having to replace some servers, some switches, recabling, some old wiring or cables in the buildings. And then, like I said, we have added a new maintenance truck. We're trying to get the van. We've got 2 buses and I think 3 on the way.
Yes.
So just kind of a summary of what we're doing. Currently, we've got 7.6 million. Like I said, we're going to with about 5.6 million by the time we're completed with all the projects that we're looking to do this year. If you want to open the insurance file, Mr. Watson. So, insurance report, we'll just go over the medical. Year over year. Can you scroll that down a little bit? Perfect. Revenues year over year up about 4.5%. Really mainly due to new bodies on the plan, new members on the plan, because the rates hadn't changed because we changed rates January 1st. So in this 6-month period, our rates would have been the same as the first 6 months. So it's mainly due to new members. It would be up a little bit because of rates, but it's mainly due to new members. Claims up 14.8%, 329,000. Overall on the year, expenditures are over revenues by almost 60,000. Last year we were over 158, so about a $218,000 difference. We do still have $2.3 million in the medical insurance plan. There is a lot of things that we're working on behind the scenes to really set a kind of a fundamental base on some things. We are looking at insurance consortium, a true consortium. With some other districts. I'm set to meet. I'm not going to announce those, but we are set to meet in January. We're looking at purchasing cooperatives. We're looking at outsourcing the pharmacy or carving out the pharmacy. We're looking at different things that can help us sustain the trend rate without having to change the rate plan or the plan design immediately. The last thing we want to rush into is just saying let's change plan design, and then we don't have a wellness program, we don't have the fundamentals in place, and then 5 years from now we're looking to change the plan design again. So I want to make sure our base and the things, our wellness is in place, a true wellness system, a true communications plan, trying to make sure all those things are in place. And then if the plan design change is ultimately the thing that we need to do, then we'll look to make that change and recommendation to the insurance committees. But without those other things in place, I don't want to rush to make just a rash rate change because our claims have increased over time. Because I think with some education, some training, some management, we can get those back under control to a certain degree. And we've got the capital expenditure report, insurance. You can pull up the financial report, Kevin, but I don't really plan to go over too much. We had the 5-year forecast last month, so unless you guys have questions on something that you reviewed.
And you said on the insurance piece, I know you said you're going to have some meetings. So they'll bringing in or joining a true consortium, because right now we're self-funded. I know that's one of the big changes you made when we came in, but that would free up some capital. So then that way, because I know for our district, one of the benefits is, I know we can't quite pay as much as the Bexley and Upper Arlington's, but our health insurance plan is one of the big selling points in our district. And I know a lot of our staff members benefit from that because it's a very nice plan. So I would imagine if we were looking at consortiums, that's going to make a significant amount of savings for us so we can move forward. And so I guess my question is, would that change the plan for our employees?
No. So it's all trying to slow trend. That's all we're trying. So we're trying to keep rate increases under 3 to 4%, not 8 to 12%. So when you're in a true consortium and you're sharing risks, if you've got 4 districts in the consortium, it's highly unlikely that all 4 districts would have poor years outside of pandemic. So if you have a poor year, the other 3 would most likely have good years. So you're really just minimizing your risk through having more individuals on the plan. That's just one piece of it. There's a purchasing cooperative, or a couple of them that we're looking at. that also uses buying power and their leverage because they have so many members. So it's kind of a stacking effect that I'm looking at to try to all piece together. And then there is the carving out of the pharmacy. Our pharmacy, our claims last year were 6 million, or right around 6 million. Our pharmacy piece of that was almost 2 million. So if we can get the pharmacy under control to where even if we save 10 to 20%, that's a couple $100,000 that we can cut out without having any changes or anything like that. It's just eliminating a middleman in the picture of who's getting the additional cost. So all those things stacked on one another kind of add up to control trend.
Because I know for me, we were talking and the teachers, the CWEA came up, and the consistency of like having that same benefit and same plan or something similar to that for our teachers is going to be really important to our staff members. Because like I said, the health plan, when I first got here, I was really impressed by the health plan that we're able to offer here. So having something that doesn't make a dramatic change for them so they can kind of rely on that, I think is going to be important for us as a district.
If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have probably quickly jumped into a rate plan change. But I've received numbers, I've received plan design changes and what that costs and that thing, but nothing's really moved the needle for me to where it's like, I'm going to take this to the committee or I'm going to bring this to the board to share. Because it really doesn't move the needle and it doesn't make any sense to make the changes for what it's saving. So it's the other pieces to it that help you sustain. And then when you do make those little changes to your deductibles or max out of pocket, it does make a huge difference long term because you've got all the other things in place to go along with it. If we just make a plan design change without having the other things in place, then we're going to have another plan design change eventually, and then there's going to be another, and then there's going to be another, and then it's going to be a snowball effect to where before long we just have a really poor insurance plan. And that's not what we want. I don't think that's what the board wants. So we're trying to control the costs in other ways because there are other ways to do it.
Excellent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. And we're going to move on to our superintendent's report this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Butler. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all our viewers. Before I get started, I want to introduce a representative from my superintendent student advisory group, Sarah Basil. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Thanks for coming tonight. Take good notes. We'll talk about it next month. So thank you very much. One thing really I want to focus on tonight is our social media. Not our social media, the monitoring safe use of our students' social media. I think last week, we all know we had that national TikTok challenge that threatened school safety. Before that, there was a challenge to destroy bathrooms in schools, and one was even slap a teacher on the back. Whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, our young people, our young adults, they're struggling to make good decisions when it comes to using social media. Mrs. Warren and Ms. Zipcheck put out some information to our kids this week about using social media, the proper use of it. And I just want to bring this up with our parents because over the last few months, we have become aware of a variety of ways that students, they're using social media to really disrupt the educational environment. They are creating accounts at school, whether it's a CW or CWHS with CWMS handle on it, and then they're having kids do stuff and post it on that site, whether it's a Snapchat, whether it's a TikTok, or whether it's Instagram. And it is disrupting the educational process because most of the stuff they're doing is making fun or taking pictures of some manner. And so it becomes an issue at school. We have accounts that are called CW Confessions where kids are putting stuff out there that they shouldn't be putting out there about other people, whether it's a staff member, whether it's another student or not. And it's just not here. It's every year. It's everywhere. But we're focusing on Canal Winchester. One of them is, for example, student A is eating lunch. When student B unknowingly takes a picture of that student A eating lunch, then student B will take that and send it to the owner of the account, which is student C, and then they'll post it. And most of the time, it's not a very nice picture that they're posting. Some people might think that that's just innocent fun, but it's not, because it's having a negative effect in our schools. And most of the stuff, the discipline that happens in school comes from either social media sites or stuff outside of school. And so I'm asking our parents to sit down and talk to their kids about the proper use of social media, being responsible digital citizens as they move forward with this. And it's just not for now, but this is a lifelong lesson. And really, it's just not for our kids, it's for everyone. And so sometimes we get on social media and there's no filter. We think we could put whatever we want about any situation, and that's not true. That does nothing but cause problem. There's an acronym out there. It's called THINK, T-H-I-N-K. And basically, what it wants you to do is ask these 5 questions before you post something. Is it true? T. Is it helpful? The H. Is it inspiring? I. Is it necessary? N. And is it kind? K. And if it doesn't match any of that, then don't post it, because it doesn't need to be out on social media. You're just looking to get a reaction or cause some type of harm or trouble for someone else or in organizations. You know, I know it's tough. Parents want their kids, they want them to have their freedom, their independence, but at the same time, they still need monitor. And do your best to monitor your kids' social media accounts. It's challenging. We know that kids are going to say, this is my rights, the First Amendment rights. However, you're the parent, you're the adult, and do your best to work with your kids and talk about the proper use of social media, because it's becoming a bigger issue than it ever was before. And so, again, you know, social media can be used in such a positive manner, and it is, but we're also seeing it being used in a very negative way that is truly affecting our school. And discipline can happen when stuff happens on social media that comes into the school. So parents and students alike need to know that. So parents, I just ask you to take the time to talk to your kids, not just one time, but do it over and over again about being positive when you're on social media. So any questions on that? Okay, it's just hard to believe that the first semester of school is coming to an end here in a few days, and we're heading into the holiday break, a much needed holiday break, as I think we all know that. The first semester of school has been very challenging, especially the last 2 weeks, as we know, with the tragic loss of 2 of our beautiful students, London and Demetrius. Nothing can ever prepare you for something like this. And it's been challenging, but as Mrs. Sherwinski said, our staff has really stepped up, and they have done a great job working with their kids, whether it's in the kindergarten level or at the 4th grade level with them, working with each other, the staff members, really trying to support each other, our administrators, and even our community, and I'm very thankful for all that. But it's been tough this year, and this break is much needed, and we're looking forward to that. As we head into the break, I just want all of us to take time to reflect on what we're thankful for. Sometimes we just get so caught up in the everyday stuff going on, negative stuff, the news, politics, all this stuff, that there's so much positive in this world, especially with one another, and just think about what's going on and being thankful for what you have, and staying focused on the important things in life, such as your family, your friends, and your health. And always try to be that I and kind. We need a lot more kindness in this world right now, because it's ugly out there. And if we could just sit back, relax, and think, how could I make a difference? How can the power of one, myself, make a difference in the lives of our kids and the lives of my family and my community? And have a good, strong reflection on that. With that, I just want to like to wish everyone in our community a safe, relaxing, and enjoyable holiday season with your family and friends. If you're traveling, please be safe. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see everyone back in 2022. And as always, make it a great day or not, the choice is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soller. Okay, and we're going to move on to district reports. Are there any questions about the district reports this evening? All right.
I would like to bring up an issue that has been made aware to me, and I'm sure to other board members, in regards to the athletics. There have been some parents concerned about the practice schedules for some of the children, particularly grades 3 through 6, where some of their rehearsal times are running pretty late and possibly irregular. Can someone speak to what efforts that are being done to kind of smooth this out, particularly on the JRD
Durbin?
side?
Yeah. Just so we know, I believe you're referring to CWJRD.
Yes.
Okay, that's not school athletics. Just so everyone understands, this is our rec group that we allow use our facilities.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically what I was going to say, CWJRD is a separate entity from us. The role that the high school or the role that the schools play into it is we work with the directors of the rec program, Misty Swearingen, soon to be another person. Our role in that is they have usage of the elementary schools, they have usage of the middle schools, they have usage of the supplemental gym in the high school. So the issue is really not a school issue in terms of hours, practice, and so forth. It's what the rec can set up with the facilities that we utilize with them.
Understandably, but we are working in partnership with them, correct?
We're working in partnership. We're working in partnership with the rec department. If I get emails from parents of rec asking me questions, I forward them to the rec and let them handle the issues. So if there's people saying there's issues, it's because I'm not responding directly to the parents because I'm not rec. We only represent the facilities that are being utilized.
And Mr. Durbin, I remember looking at the email. You shared your schedule and your practice information with the CWJRD, so it allows them to schedule around you guys, obviously around your athletic schedule as well.
The issue is always additional usage of facilities. That becomes the issue. And there's certain ones that we have to block off to protect for our school purposes. And sometimes they think because it's not being utilized, they should be able to utilize it. And that's not always the case. The initial agreement and obligation or usage of specifically the high school, that might be where the issues are, is the supplemental gym. And sometimes that word doesn't trickle down. And that's the bottom line. So the communication is with us, the schools, with the rec department, not necessarily the parents of the players. That should be with them and not us.
And as I know, I have a student who's participating in athletics, and I'm seeing the basketball practices and stuff like that start to occur. So it sounds like, or what it appears like, the schedule has kind of been finalized on their end, and they're using the facility. So it does sound like it's worked itself out, but.
Ever since I've been here for 6 years, in fact, they're using a little bit more of the facilities that they were 6 years ago. So it's just the constant communication. It's the constant, I think, re-education that the rec has to do with newer parents. So we're not utilizing any less facilities than we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And it does sound like, from what I saw in the newspaper, that the city is going to make an investment. So they're going to be bringing in a full-time person to run the CWGRD. So it sounds like hopefully with that person in there in a full-time capacity, that will facilitate a better communication with us between the two entities.
Correct, Mr. Butler. They actually asked me to be a part of the hiring
Okay.
with the rec. So the school is involved in that process as well. In fact, that's how good I think that our partnership and communication and relationship is with the rec department.
Yeah, and I was talking to city council earlier before the meeting, and they extended an offer for the director position. We are the fiscal agent for the joint rec. So the city will make the donation to CWGRD that will be posted on our books as part of the fiscal agent.
Okay.
And then they will pay that director. And I think things will get much smoother once they have a director in place, because the one employee that they have paid right now is mainly just doing the necessary things in the work side of things. It's not being programming, and it's not having the bigger picture of the joint rec in mind. The director is going to help with that, and it was really needed to have that position, and hopefully they can even add a couple part-time people to assist with the programming of the joint rec.
And I know we're a different entity, but it sounds like this is a long-term commitment from the city. It's not just like a kind of filling in the gap this year. It sounds like this is something they're committed to doing over a long period of time to make sure that the CWJRD continues to exist. And I know we've done some things on our end to kind of help facilitate them, particularly as the pandemic kind of came, and obviously we had to adjust to the new realities. So it's a positive trend, so that's a good thing.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Sorry, Mrs. Talley. Is there any other questions about anything else on the the district reports this evening? Okay, so if there's nothing else on the district reports, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. So I'm going to need a motion on the consent agenda this evening.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
and with that, motion and second. Mrs. Hunt, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We'll start with number 1. We are asking you to approve the minutes from the November 15th regular meeting. Moving on to number 2, certified personnel. We are asking for you to make 2 adjustments for resident educator facilitator stipends. We basically pay $200 for each facilitator, and we're switching one individual to another. So you'll notice that one will make $200 more and the other will make $200 less. We are asking for an approval of 2 maternity leave requests and a teacher recommendation for Emily Klopfer, who will be starting with us January 4th. And I believe last time we discussed additional positions for intervention to assist, and this is one of those positions at Winchester Trail. Number 3 is our classified personnel. We have quite a few under this. We have several resignations. We do have a leave of absence request from one of our new staff members who had already had a vacation scheduled prior to us hiring. And then we are hiring quite a bit of classified staff. As we mentioned earlier, we haven't stopped hiring this year, so we're always looking, again, for anybody listening. If you want to be a bus driver or substitute for us, we will take you. And you'll also notice we are approving several substitute classified members as well. Moving on to number 4, these are our supplemental personnel. This is mainly for the spring season, for our spring athletic season. And then we have our volunteers as well. Number 5 is our special service contract. I believe this is a special service contract with Hogland Learning Center for the school year. And that is all for the consent agenda.
Are there any questions about the consent agenda this evening? If not, all right. If not, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 3-0. And we're going to move on to action items. So the first action item is to set the January meeting date. So I need a motion to set the the day and time for the organizational and regular January meeting for the 2022 year as presented. So first of all, I just want to make sure for people listening at home, setting our January date, what date are we looking at, Mr.
January 10th,
January 10th.
Monday, January 10th. So it's a second Monday instead of the 3rd, because the 3rd is Martin Luther King Day.
Okay.
So it's a
gonna be
second Monday, January 10th.
And to be clear for those listening at home, our organizational meeting is at 6:45, correct?
Correct.
And then we start our regular meeting in January at 7 p.m. as our normal time.
Immediately following that. It might run a little late, but yeah.
Gotcha. So I need a motion on setting the January meeting date, and that's going to be for January the 10th.
For clarification, before I make a motion, are we going to approve it as is with the meeting being held in the education center in the meeting room? Or are we going to have discussion for, over Ms. Barnes' request prior to
I mean, we could,
voting on it?
we wanted to have a
Are we
discussion.
going to do that separate? Or are we
I
gonna-
think for this meeting, we'd have to come back and have a special meeting to set it for January the 10th. So I think if we're going to have that discussion, it'd probably be better to do it now as opposed to waiting. So then we're going to have to come back, particularly because we are down a couple board members, so you never know what can happen. So for the January 10th meeting, I know we typically meet in this building and in this room. And then over the last few years, especially during the pandemic, we've made significant improvements. I know we've added YouTube and we've been able to stream our board meetings. So honestly, for January, I would err on the side of being consistent and having it in this room just because we can stream it, particularly for those parents and people at home and who are interested in being involved in the board meetings. If we do have it down there, we obviously would have to relocate it. put a financial cost on our district, and obviously, I don't know what is going on in Olney Speak, so I can't speak with certainty, but is that space, will we be able to actually have a meeting down there, or will we have to do something?
I'd have to check the calendar to see what's going on, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I don't think it's a big deal. Even if we approve it here, we're just going downstairs. It's not like we're changing a room. So if we want to make a decision later, I don't think it's a big deal to do.
Okay.
Because we're just, it's still the same building. We're just meeting in a different spot. So
So we
I
can-
I think what's important is you approve the date.
Okay.
And the time, and then
That's
if
something
we
we can-
change location, we'll just make that change.
Okay.
And get it out to our people.
Okay, so as if it stands right now, then we're gonna go ahead and move ahead and set that January date for January the 10th. And that's gonna be for our organizational and obviously our regular January board meeting in 2022. So I would need a motion on setting that date and then obviously a second.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
So Sally and then Mr. Donahue is gonna second. All right, so if we got a motion and second, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Beller?
Yes. Okay, so the motion passes 3-0. And moving on to number 2, action item, which is the elect the president pro tem. So we're gonna need a motion to appoint someone to be serve as our board president pro tem, to serve as January 1st, 2022 through January 10th of 2022 for the organizational meeting when the 2022 board president will be elected. So I'm gonna need a motion to appoint someone.
I move to appoint Kevin Butler as board president pro temp to serve, or to service for January 1st, 2022 through the January 10th, 2022 organizational meeting. And that's when the board president will be elected.
Second.
So I have a motion and I have a second. All right, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Beller?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 3-0. And then action item number 3, which is going to be a board member 101 conference. So this is going to be a motion to approve the following board members-elects to attend the Ohio School Board Association Board Member 101 Conference held Saturday, January 22nd, and Sunday, January 23rd, 2022, at a cost of $285 plus incidentals per attendee, and that's going to be for Mrs. Vangela Barnes and Mr. David George. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 3.
So move.
Second.
Okay, so I got a motion, and then I have a second. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Tally?
Yes.
Mr. Beller?
Yes. Okay, so that motion passes 3-0. And then action item number 4, which is going to be adopting the change to our busing and our building start and end times. And then that's gonna, again, that's gonna start on January, I believe, the 10th, correct?
10th, that is correct.
Okay, and just for those people listening, Mr. Sotler or Mr., I don't know, Dr. Brewing,
Dr.
if
Brewing.
you listening, understand what we're actually gonna be voting on.
Yeah, again,
this
so
evening.
we're going to have, for the high school, for the middle school, and for Winchester Trail, they will start at their normal time. And then they will have a 1-hour early dismissal. Okay? Indian Trail will start on a 1-hour later time. So they'll go 1 hour later. So it's 8:55, so they'll start at 9:55, and they'll end at the same time. Kindergarten and preschool will stay on their regular schedule for now.
Okay. All right, and we have a motion and second on that, so, Mr. Robert.
So move.
Wait, hold on, I'm sorry. We motioned to put it on the agenda, I apologize. So I'm gonna need a motion on the action item number 4, I'm
So
sorry.
move.
Second.
Okay, so I got a motion from Mr. Donahue, and I do have a second from Mrs. Talley. Okay, so now I have a motion and a second. Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Beller?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 3-0. And then moving on to discussion items, so we have our first reading of board policy. So, Mrs. Hunt?
Thank you. I will mention, if you notice, Mr. Watson has on the computer here a summary of these policies. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to read it word for word. I'm going to summarize it briefly, and this is available on the board docs to look at the summary for the changes, and the policy liaisons did meet, I want to say 2 weeks ago, to review the changes. So we'll start first with the 6146, post-issuance compliance for tax-exempt and tax-advantaged obligations. This is being released in response to audit questions and are a result of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's and the MCDC initiative. Public participation at board meetings. These changes are revisions to the bylaws and are in line with the recent decision of the U.S. District Court. 1530, evaluation of principals and other administrators. These revisions reflect the latest version of the OPES, which is the Ohio Principal Evaluation System model and framework. 1617, 3217, and 4217. This one's lengthy. It is aligned with current law. We do not expect to use this, but it is a requirement to have in our policies in case the board would act on this. And basically, it's talking about the training that would be needed if we would allow for a staff member to carry. We are not planning on allowing a staff member to carry, at least at this time, so this really is not going to come into effect. We just needed it in the language, and it does reflect current law. Moving on to 2271 College Credit Plus program. This is a House bill from House Bill 110. It included a modification to the College Credit Plus program eligibility. 2370-01 is blended learning. These revisions reflect the changes included in House Bill 110, modifying the definition of blended learning. 5111 and 5111.02, which is eligibility of resident, non-resident students, and the educational opportunity for military children. These two policies have been updated to include new enrollment and education requirements for children of military families. 5200 attendance. This policy has been revised to reflect changes included in House Bill 110. Additionally, temporary language added to guide attendance strategies for remote learning. 5336 is care of students with diabetes. These revisions are in response to House Bill 231, which provides specifics to how school districts manage care of students with diabetes. 5350, student mental health and suicide prevention. This policy was updated to incorporate new requirements mandated by the Safety and Violence Education Students Act. 5464, early high school graduation. The policy has been revised to reflect the changes in testing requirements and their impact on acceleration and graduation. 5516, student hazing. The policy was revised based on the requirements in Senate Bill 126. 5630-01 is for positive behavior intervention and supports and the limited use of restraint and seclusion. This policy has been revised in response to changes in Ohio Administrative Code and issuance by the Ohio Department of Education of the positive behavior interventions and support and the restraint and seclusion policy. 5722 is school-sponsored publications and productions. This replacement policy, it was a complete replacement. A lot has changed over the years since the last time we revisited it with social media and technology. So this policy is proposed because of the wide variety of school-sponsored student media that are present in schools today and due to the many technological advances that have occurred. 6114, cost principles, spending federal funds. This policy has been revised to provide greater detail and allowability guidance for districts regarding expenditure of federal funds. 7300, which is disposition of real property, personal property. House Bill 110 further modified the definition of unused school facilities in relation to the disposition of facilities. 8330, student records. This policy has been revised to reflect the change in federal rule. If the district issues student email addresses, it must release such email addresses to military recruiters. 8400, school safety. This policy is being revised to clarify that districts are now required to create, train, and utilize threat assessment teams. 8462 is student abuse and neglect. This policy was updated to incorporate new requirements mandated by the Safety and Violence Education Students Act. 8600, transportation. House Bill 110 changed a number of provisions for community and non-public school student transportation, and this policy speaks on that with the revisions. 8651 is non-routine use of school buses. There's a new statute included in House Bill 110 that authorizes the Board of Education to enter into agreements with various private and public government and nonprofit entities to provide transportation using the school district's fleet in order to help them fulfill business-related activities in times of emergency. And 8740 is bonding. The policy has been revised to reflect the insurance option made available through House Bill 291, which authorizes school districts to use an employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty policy in lieu of surety bonds. All of those were recommended changes and revisions by Neola, which is the experts on policy that we use in the district. So those were all recommended. And the last two are district request. They are very small changes. The first one is the third grade reading guarantee. All it is a change in language from English as a second language to English language learners. It's just new language to identify those students. And then 5710 is a policy, student grievance. That policy is going to be deleted because it is actually addressed in policy 9130, which is complaints. So we had double policies and it addressed it in 9130 as is. So those are the changes with policy.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hunt. And don't have any questions for Mrs. Hunt. Section J, is there a need to enter into executive session this evening?
No, we do not have a need.
And then for closing items, announcements, one thing I wanted to make sure I spent time doing is, as we get to the end of 2021, I wanted to thank Mr. John Metzler and then Mr. Steve Donahue for their service on the board. I know Mr. Metzler obviously couldn't be here this evening, but he served 2 full terms. He's also been a member of the CWJRD, and he served with distinction over the last 8 years here in Canal, Winchester. So as he's brought value to the district, I wanted to make sure, even though he couldn't physically be here, that we acknowledge him and all that he's done for the district. As we know, as being a board member, it's not always as rewarding as one might think, that it's a lot of hard work. And then obviously this last school year, we know that with all the changes and dealing with COVID and transitions, that there's a lot of work and requirements as a board member, and John has served with distinction over the last 8 years. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledge him. And then Mr. Donahue, I wanted to make sure I took the time to acknowledge you and thank you for all you've done this school year as well. I know we kind of asked you to come here and help us out in the short term, and you've done so. And what you've done for us has been more than what's the word I'm looking for? It's been fantastic having you as a board member. That's the word I'm looking for. It's been awesome, Steve. Really, honestly, you stepping in kind of at the last minute and being willing to help us out as we transition in a challenging time, and you've done so, and we couldn't thank you more. So I know you're going to continue to serve the school district. You've done so in many capacities, so we look forward to having you around and working with you and your continued partnership with the district. So I wanted to make this time to make sure I acknowledge you as well.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, and unless anybody else has something else, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting this evening.
So move.
All right.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and I have a second. So, Mr. Roberts?
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. So, motion passes 3-0, and we are adjourned, and it is 8:17 p.m.